like and subscribe if you are new to this channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell icon to get updated to our daily AskReddit stories. Have you ever experienced a plot twist in real life? I started working at Home Depot around 2005 and was somewhat of an introvert. I graduated in 2004 and really struggled breaking out of the high school mentality and not having a set group of friends to hang out with. So I start at Home Depot, and a guy, Nick, I work with, invites me out drinking. I'm only 19 at the time, but he's a few years older. We ended up becoming very good friends, but haven't necessarily breached the emotional shit beyond chicks. Fast forward a few months, and my stepmom's mother dies. Pretty bleak stuff, and I really just have my family to talk to, which of course isn't the same at all. I'm kinda struggling. My buddy Nick is drifting away as well, and the day of the funeral comes. It's towards the end, and I walk up to say my final goodbyes, look over, Nick is there staring at me dumbfounded. We high five, hug, and find out he's my stepmom's nephew, and we were both drifting away because we didn't have anyone to bring real shit to, outside of family. Been best friends since. TLDR, met a friend, high-fived over my grandmother's corpse, leveled up to cousins. I walked into a new job on my first day. Walked up to a guy and introduced myself. He says, no time to waste, and assigns me a few weird tasks and I start on them. I'd been working for an hour when my phone rings, and it's from the job that I just started. I answer, and the guy on the phone says, you are aware today is your first day? I said, yes, I'm actually here. David gave me some stuff to do. The guy on the phone says, who's David? Apparently a complete stranger just started telling me what to do, and I didn't think twice about it. We had a pretty good laugh. I played EverQuest about 10 years ago, and joined a guild. There was this dreamy high-elf cleric who was always playing at the same time as me. Who am I kidding? Everyone played all day on EverQuest. Anyways, we always played together, sometimes out killing things, sometimes just sitting around in the city talking. Over the course of 6 months, this woman became my reason for logging on. We eventually got married, in-game, which her real-life husband, who also played the game, didn't think was that funny. We were very close, and she told me many details about her personal life and her husband. It felt like I was on the shotgun end of an affair, but I didn't know any better. It felt great talking to her. My head was in the clouds. Anytime she signed on, my mood improved, and I looked forward to it every day. Eventually, she sent me pictures of herself. She was a pretty blonde-haired woman of 27 years old, a 1 on the binary scale, the only honest rating system. She asked me for pictures in return, but I said no, because it would be weird for a 12-year-old boy to send pictures of himself over the internet. I don't think she saw that coming, and I don't think I ever saw her again. I was job searching in my early 20s. I get to this job interview, and the guy didn't know I was coming. He grudgingly walks me into his office and starts asking me questions. I had been on so many interviews, I just wasn't in the mood for someone to make me feel like I wasn't welcome. He asks me why I want to work here, and part of my answer is, I like to help people. He responds with a bullshit. I am surprised, but I can tell this is going nowhere. The rest of the interview is formality, and I end with a sarcastic, sorry to bother you. I get back to my apartment and I'm feeling down. I receive a voicemail asking where I was for my interview. They say if I am still interested to call back. I compare name, number and company with the business card I was given, and it turns out I was on the wrong floor. I just walked into a random company and was given an interview. But yeah, I didn't get the job. About 3 years ago, one of my best friends committed suicide in his apartment. This was shocking to all of us, because he was one of the happiest guys we knew. Fast forward to about 2.5 years later, a new report comes out showing it was a murder, and a very good cover-up. The suspects, my other 2 best friends. The investigation is still ongoing. My ex-girlfriend's mom was in hospice care dying of cancer when she told her son, My ex's brother, that the man she was married to, the man that raised him his entire life, was not his biological father. This was news to everyone involved, and was later confirmed through testing. Without going into details, the man who raised my ex's brother was not the most attentive father, nor all that warm and kind. They had kind of a typical broken home story. He was a bit of a drunk, they got divorced, and the kid was a big time troublemaker. The final twist came shortly after their mom passed. The non-bio dad took the kid hunting and told him that he didn't care. That he was his son. That nothing and no one was going to take that away from him. Coming from that man, it was huge, and no one expected it. They became extremely close after that, and last I heard still visit with each other several times a week. Happened to a friend of mine. She had been feeling lonely for months, and had found a guy she really got on with after meeting him gaming. Sadly, they lived too far apart to meet face to face. Few months of them getting closer, until he asks her out. They started dating. She confesses to me that she really likes him, and she's saving money to go visit. Fast forward 14 months. She's saved the money, she's booked the flight, she's going to meet the man she loves. Everything is perfect. She's flying out the very next day. Cue me getting a hysterical call late at night. It's hard to decipher what she's saying. I get her to slow down and take it easy. He's not him. I ask for clarification. He's not him. She cries. I am still confused. I don't get it. What does that mean? He lied about what he does, or his age or something? I asked. She replies, no, he lied about who he is, what he is. He is not him. He is she. He is not Michael. She is Michelle. Turns out the girl was a lonely lesbian who looked a bit butch if appropriately dressed / made up for webcam, who'd been using pictures of her brother the entire time for everything else. Sadly, she almost had a nervous breakdown, and has ended up with serious trust issues and a medium-sized case of homophobia. TLDR, friend dated Michael for almost 2 years, before finding out just before she met the man of her dreams, it was Michelle, the guy's sister instead. So my friend told me about this one. Her best friend was dating this guy, and they were pretty sure they had found the one with each other. This guy was all ready to propose, and was picking out rings. So these two decide to have a threesome, and as a third he chooses his ex-girlfriend. At this point, any guy with a shred of common sense should know, this is probably going to end badly, but this is where the twist is. The girlfriend enjoyed it a little too much, and broke up with him to date his ex-girlfriend. I used to know a guy named Ben. Ben was the biggest two-faced douche I'd ever known. He once met a girl online, and went out to meet her, and returned a few days later. When asked about her, to his female friends, he said that there was no spark, no chemistry, whatever. To his guy friends he would say that she was so ugly he couldn't stand to look at her. Ben hated ugly women. Ben and I lived together briefly, and my overweight girlfriend, later wife and now ex-wife, stayed with us frequently. She was friendly with him, would hang out with him while I was at work, and frequently drive him around if he needed. As soon as she was gone, though, he would laugh about how fat she was. Ben hated fat women. Years and years pass. I'm on OkCupid one day and I see a new member. She looks vaguely familiar. I look at her photos, and it hits me. Ben, who was already unattractive, gained a bunch of weight, and became transgendered. In essence, he became a fat, ugly woman. The very thing he hated the most. The end. Or is it? Transgendered Ben briefly dated a lesbian friend of mine who lives with my ex-wife, and would come hang out not knowing he was in the house of the woman he would only a few years before make fun of for being fat. His relationship with the lesbian didn't last, needless to say. My little brother hitchhikes a lot. He was trying to hitch to Valdez, Alaska to run a half marathon there before hitching to my parents' house near Fairbanks. He gets picked up near Seattle by a woman. They are chatting, and my brother is telling her the story of how he rode his bike from Alaska to Argentina. The woman says her neighbor's son had done the same thing. Turns out she was my parents' next door neighbor. A few years ago I was in a longboarding accident, and got a pretty bad concussion. The concussion caused me to forget pretty much that whole day. but my friends had explained to me what happened. They told me that I had gotten scared of going too fast and tried to jump off the longboard. For 2 years they ridiculed me for jumping off, because jumping off a longboard is not the smartest thing to do when you want to get off. I lived with the ridicule until my best friend told me that I was pushed off by one of my friends. This isn't that big of a twist, but it really showed me the loyalty of my friends. I quickly left that group and became friends with kids that play Dungeons and Dragons and look at Reddit. I must say, I like this group a lot more. So, when my grandmother died, we all found out that when she was 13 in Argentina, her older brother, which none of us knew existed, became psychotic and was hospitalized in a mental institution. Remember, this is 1930s Argentina. Over time, my grandma lost touch with her brother, what with moving overseas and so on. It was always her secret shame that she abandoned her brother. Her brother apparently later died while still hospitalized. Alone. Fast forward 70 years. Grandma dies, and my father goes to Argentina. We live in Israel now, to meet with family and find and pay respects at said uncle's grave. He starts going from cemetery to cemetery, searching for his uncle's grave. He can't find it. Maybe he was cremated? So he starts going from mental hospital to mental hospital. Of course we don't know where he was hospitalized, searching through records. Soon enough he picks up on a 70-year-old trail and follows his uncle from hospital to hospital, some of which closed down decades ago. Finally, he reaches modern times, and plot twist, finds his uncle alive and well, 96 years old, in a Buenos Aires mental hospital. Anyway, long story short, my dad took him out of the hospital, put him in a supported living environment, and got him off 90% of the meds they had him on. Thus emerged a relatively stable, but still schizophrenic, old man. Epilogue. Recently he called my aunt and said, "Susan, did you know that America has a black president?" Not a huge plot twist, but I did find this occurrence that happened to a friend rather amusing. My friend who lives on campus near me had 5 other roommates, each with their own rooms of course. One of the roommates was a Chinese guy, who for a while had been acting strangely. He alternated between being really friendly and towards being cold and unsure. He'd never open his door completely when people knocked, and would sometimes forget things that he'd had said when referenced later. His English skill would fluctuate wildly, and he would sometimes change his clothes oddly halfway through the day. He would also usually spend all his time inside his room. He'd also make himself a rather large amount of meals throughout the day. After 6 months of this strange behavior, but largely not worth asking about, one day my friend came back from a class, opened the door which was next to the kitchen, looked to the side into the kitchen, and there were 2 of the odd acting roommates staring back at her, deer in the headlights style. Turns out he'd been hiding his twin brother in his room since he'd arrived, and thought that the roommates would report him to the university if they found out. So they took it in turns leaving the room, or watching if the coast was clear before they both came out, alternated cooking meals one at a time, etc etc. So, sometime last year, I got a friend request on Facebook from this girl I don't know. We have some friends in common, and her profile says she had gone to the same university, and was in the same program, just a few years before me, so I figure we must have met at some party or something, and accept the request. Flash forward to July. I moved to a new city for a new job, and on my first day, bam. There's the girl who added me on Facebook. We ended up dating for a few months too. Turns out, she had added me because one of our bosses has literally the exact same name as me, and she thought she was adding him to Facebook. Always thought it was a really bizarre situation. For backstory, I was in love with my best friend for a long time, but something was always in the way, be it my significant other or his. We had dated once, but it didn't end very well. I was going to a party with a mutual friend of ours, and he told me that my best friend was going to propose to this girl I couldn't stand that night. He told me where he was going to propose, so I rushed there to stop him, proclaim my love for him. You know how it goes. When I get up there, I see that he has everything set up. Candles, rose petals, the New York City skyline, everything that would make a girl melt. I pick up a piece of paper he had placed on the ground, read it, and when I look up, he's down on one knee, proposing to me.